The scripture that I'm going to start with is found in the book of John, John chapter 4. And it's a familiar story. I'm sure once you get to John chapter 4, you'll recognize it. All right, is everybody there? Yeah? All right, and I'm going to start at about the 5th verse. And this is talking about Jesus, of course. Then cometh he to a city of Samaria, which is called Sychar, near to the parcel of ground that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Now Jacob's well was there. Jesus, therefore, being wearied with his journey, sat thus on the well, and it was about the 6th hour. There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, Give me to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, askest drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with the Samaritans. Amen. Jesus answered and said unto her, If thou knowest the gift of God, and who it is that saith to thee, Give me to drink, thou wouldest have asked of him, and he would have given thee living water. I guess it's been for maybe about a solid 3 weeks or a month or so. God has been changing some things around, and I swear to you, if it's something that I haven't gone through, or it's something that I'm not going through, then I'm not going to come up here and talk about it. So this is actually something that I'm currently in the midst of, that God is teaching me. The title today is Heavier Things. Heavier Things. All right, then let's keep on reading. Start at 11. The woman saith unto him, Sir, thou hast nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. From whence then hast thou that living water? Art thou greater than our father Jacob, which gave us the well, and drank thereof himself, and his children, and his cattle? And Jesus answered and said unto her, Whosoever drinketh of this water shall thirst again. But whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water, springing up into everlasting life. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Jesus saith unto her, Go call thy husband, and come hither. The woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast said well, I have no husband. For thou hast had 5 husbands, and he whom thou now hast is not thy husband. In that saidest thou truly. The woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Jesus said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour cometh when ye shall neither in this mountain nor yet in Jerusalem worship the Father. Ye worship, ye know not what. We know that we worship, for salvation is of the Jews. But the hour cometh, and now is, when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth. And the Father seeketh such to worship him. In this conversation, just as he's doing with the Samaritan woman, the same as he's doing with me, and I believe that this is what he's saying to his church. He is trying to draw the Samaritan woman into heavier things. Now, there are certain things that if you've got, a vision for your life and God has given you dreams and goals, there are certain things that cannot make that journey with you. If you notice in this conversation, the Samaritan woman can only think of the natural. She says, the first thing she starts talking about is people. This is my father's well, my grandfather's well. This is the well that, Jacob gave to Joseph. And the Samaritans, I'm listening to what you're saying, but the Samaritans and the Jews really don't get along all that well. The Jews have no dealings with us. And as you can see, Jesus is probing, and he's trying to draw her into heavier things. But as long as you keep talking about people and places and things and what was and what it used to be, you'll never get into heavier things. And I know that's where God is wanting us to be. So the one good thing about Jesus is that he can meet you where you are. And so as she continues on talking about the relationship between Jews and Samaritans, whose well it is, my father's and my grandfather's, Jesus says, okay, he does something really, really interesting. Look at verse 14, still in John 4. Look at 14. He says, but whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give him shall never thirst. But the water that I shall give him shall be in him a well of water, springing up into everlasting life. Okay? 15. The woman saith unto him, Sir, give me this water, that I thirst not, neither come hither to draw. Now, 16 is where Jesus does something that it's odd, it's different. I looked at it as being a bit irrelevant. She asked for the water. Okay, then my thought would be that Jesus would just lay hands on her or, talk to her about salvation. He would say something like, hey, follow me, whatever. But he says, after she asked for the water, he says in 16, Jesus saith unto her, Go call thy husband and come hither, which has absolutely nothing to do with water at all. Remember what I said about Jesus meeting you where you are to get you to where you need to be. What he's doing is, since she can only process things of the natural and natural relationships, and since she's talking about people, Jesus said, okay, you want to talk about whose well this is and my relationship with the Samaritans? I'm going to talk to you about people, because that's the only thing you seem to be able to grasp at this point. Get your husband. Of course, Jesus knew she didn't have a husband. And so, reading on, 17, the woman answered and said, I have no husband. Jesus said unto her, Thou hast said well, I have no husband. Yeah, that's true. You don't. But you've had 5 husbands, and the guy you're with right now is not your husband. Now look at 19. Seemingly, Jesus was off track. But look at 19. You clearly see he's not off track. He never is. The woman saith unto him, Sir, I perceive that thou art a prophet. You see what Jesus is getting? Now, I had to talk to you about, since you want to talk about people, let's discuss your husband, and the fact that that's not your husband, since you want to talk about people. Immediately after he basically, read her life real quick, she says, I perceive that thou art a prophet. If talking about people and telling you about natural things and dealing with life is what I need to do to get you to understand who I am, that's what he'll do. Amen. And now I'm going to keep reading on. 20. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and ye say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Okay. She's still talking about people and what was. This has nothing to do with the living water at all. Go on down to 25. The woman saith unto him, I know that Messiah cometh, which is called Christ. When he is come, he will tell us all things. So now at least she's getting there. She's talking along the right lines. And she knows she's been taught before. That's why she said that when Christ comes, he will tell us all things. Obviously, somewhere along the line, the gospel was preached to her in some way, shape, or form. Whether it was passed down from dad or granddad or grandmother, she knew what she was talking about. Somewhat. Amen. Jesus saith unto her, I that speak unto thee am he. And upon this, look at 27, and upon this came his disciples, and marveled that he talked with the woman. Yet no man said, What seekest thou? Or why talkest thou with her? The woman then left her water pot, and went her way into the city, and saith to the men, Come see a man which told me all things that I ever did. Is not this the Christ? And that's a beautiful thing. Amen. Because once she got out of the natural, once she got through talking about people and places and things, Jesus met her where she was. And just the fact that he told her about her life and the men that she had dealt with, she knew that he was the Christ. Amen. Now, the good thing about the Samaritan woman is it didn't take her long to catch on. Sometimes it takes a while to catch up to what Jesus is doing. Like sometimes you read and you have to read something over and over and over again to get it. Sometimes God has to tell you the same thing over and over again until you finally get it. But she got it pretty quickly. Now, the issue is now with the disciples. See, it's about the way you perceive things. I'll tell you this, the same thing can happen to two different people. And it's all in how you perceive it. They'll both perceive it different ways. She perceived not only that he was a prophet, but he was Christ. And now here comes the disciples. And all the wonderful things that Jesus is saying, and I know they came in on the tail end of the discussion. I get that. But their thought process was, they didn't say it, but what's going on? Like, why is he talking to her? One of my favorite quotes is from Eleanor Roosevelt, and I'll read it. It's very short. It says, great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. Great minds discuss ideas. Average minds discuss events. Small minds discuss people. And so, in light of everything that Jesus is doing, all the disciples could wonder is, why is he talking to her? What is he talking about? Why are we here? You know? The word God gave me this is about 3 weeks ago, is base. Base. He said, Eric, stop focusing on the baser things of life. And I couldn't shake it. Baser, you know. And then I looked it up because I knew that, you know, sometimes God may tell you something and, you know, you try to look up the word or you look up the phrase and it's totally not what God meant. So I looked up base, and the first thing I read, and it was talking about the foundation of something, the lowest point, the roots. And I said, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, and I know God is saying base. But reading on, the second definition of base or baser, and I'll read that for you as well. This is a great word, actually. Without basis, without moral principles, low-minded, common, unseemly, evil, sinful, wrong, shameful, improper, worthless, and contemptible. The baser things or baser actions are befitting a person of low social class, not noble in character, purpose, or quality. And I said, you know, that makes a lot of sense because here, well, for quite some time, you know, and I tell my wife this, you know, sometimes we'll watch something and I get to a point where I just can't watch it. And it's not about, you know, if God is God, you know, we call him King Jesus, correct? Right? So if we are his children, what does that make us? Princes, princesses, royalty, royal family, okay? So there are certain things, if we are going to call ourselves his children, there are certain things that we just can't be a part of. There are certain things that we just can't take part in. There are certain things that we just can't watch. It's not about being bougie or thinking that you're better than someone else, because that's not it at all. It's just the fact that when is the last time you were out and about and you bumped into Barack Obama? Or when have you been hanging out on a Saturday night? You may have gone to a bar and lo and behold, you were sitting next to Prince William. It doesn't happen because there are certain things that royal children are taught from birth that they cannot do. There's certain places that they cannot do. They cannot go. They're taught how to eat. They're taught what to eat, where to go, what to say, respect for, you know, who's in authority and leadership. They're taught how to behave towards your servants. They're taught how to behave in certain social settings from birth. It's the same. That's why Jesus talks about a kingdom, because that's something that we understand. He talks about royalty and princes and princesses because we understand it. Now, as part of the greatest royal family that you could ever be a part of, Jesus is saying that God is saying we just have to get on to heavier things. He said, Eric, you've got to get on to heavier things. You've got to stop focusing on the baser things of life, which is why royals live, or the wealthy live in a certain part of town. They're not over here with people of lower social class. And I know that, you know, that sounds negative, and I get it. But once you profess to belong to God, what did he say? Set your affections on things above. That's not being bougie or thinking you're better than anybody else. However, that as his children, we're learning how to be royalty. We're learning where to go, what to do, what to wear, how to behave, how to dress. Go to Still stay in John, okay? Just move on to chapter 13. And we'll start at verse 21. John 13, 21. You ready?
Amen.
Okay, now this is very close around the time where, the Last Supper is occurring. Okay, and Jesus is about to be, he's going to allow himself to be taken hold of and captured. Okay, 21 says, okay, now before 21, Jesus is doing a lot of talking because he's about to, depart the earth. He's going to be crucified. He's got work to do. 21, he says, when Jesus had thus said, he was troubled in spirit and testified and said, verily, verily, I say unto you that one of you shall betray me. Now, he had just left off talking about how the scripture needs to be fulfilled, about his death and things about his resurrection, and instructions on how to be the servant. Let the greatest among you be the servant. He had just finished washing their feet, and he talked about them watching one another's backs, and making sure that we encourage one another to righteousness and instruct one another. And then in the middle of that, in 21, he was like, you know what? Somebody's going to betray me. 22. Then the disciples looked one on another, doubting of whom he spake. Now there was leaning on Jesus' bosom one of the disciples whom Jesus loved. Simon Peter therefore beckoned to him that he should ask who it should be of whom he spake. So Peter wants to know who is going to betray him. Now, why that information is pertinent, I don't know. Move on to John, the 21st chapter, and start at 18. So we're about 8 chapters later, and I'll show you why that's important. Now, in the chapters in between John 13 and John 21, if your Bible is color-coded, with the words of God in red and regular words in black, you'll see that there's a lot of red, and Jesus is doing a lot of talking. Amen. Okay, now move on to 21, chapter 21, verse 18. Now also in those chapters, Jesus was crucified and buried, and he rose again, and now he's back. Okay. Chapter 21, verse 18 reads, verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself, and walkest whither thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee, and carry thee whither thou wouldest not. This spake he, signifying by what death he should glorify God. And when he had spoken this, he saith unto him, follow me. Okay?
Amen.
Very simple. Follow me. Then Peter, turning about, seeth the disciple whom Jesus loved following, which also leaned on his breast at supper, and said, Lord, which is he that betrayeth thee? Peter, seeing him, saith to Jesus, Lord, and what shall this man do? Jesus saith unto him, if I will that he tarry till I come, what is that to thee? What is that to thee? Follow thou me. The crazy thing is, of all the stuff Jesus was talking about, Peter says, before Jesus is crucified, before they take hold on him, hey man, who is it? Who is going to betray you? And so after the death, burial, and resurrection, and Jesus appears again, the first thing out of his mouth is, hey man, who is it that betrayed you?
Lord.
This is how we miss it. If all you can do is worry about what's going on with somebody else, Jesus said, dude, what is it to you? How is this information going to benefit you in any way, shape, or form? What does it matter if he goes, if he stays, if he's here when I come back? What does it really have to do with you and what I said do? In those chapters, he's saying, feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Go feed my lambs. Peter, do you love me? Follow me. Follow me. Feed the sheep. Feed the lambs. Hey, man, I hear all that, man, but who was it again that betrayed you? But and it's funny because all these chapters have gone by, and is that the only thing on his mind? What happened to this dude? That's crazy. But it's real. And we do it all the time. All the time. We get awesome word, and God speaks to us in this church, right? And then we go out and we be like, yeah, man, so what happened to your boy? It's like, you got to understand, when Satan says that he steals, kills, and destroys, he's not just saying, I'm going to take your money. He's trying to really steal the word that was thrown out in these services. He's trying to pluck up the seeds that were planted. And as soon as you go out here talking about whatever and doing whatever and so did this, you've forgotten all about what was said here. You've forgotten all about what you got in your prayer time this morning. You've forgotten all about what you read in your quiet time yesterday. That's why he says, meditate on the word. So when we get word here, it's for us, obviously, but it's for us to chew on and meditate on and read verse 4 over and over again until it gets here. Because once it's here, Satan can't take it. Once you got a scripture committed to memory and it's down in here, all the lessons that you've learned, Satan can't take it. But if the seed was just thrown out and it hasn't even made its way into the soil, that's when the birds and the fowls of the air come to get it. So you forget all about the good seed and the good word that's been coming forth. Quick history lesson. Again, God told me, Eric, stop focusing on the baser things of life. This is low, common, just ignorant stuff, okay? Our coins used to be made of precious metals. Our coins used to be gold and silver. The good thing about that is we kind of have some references to gold and silver in the Bible. God refers to us as precious metals and how he's going to refine us and make us pure gold, and the refiner's fire as far as making the silver pure and getting out the impurities. Now, somewhere along the line, we started introducing other metals into our currency, right? We started seeing things like copper and nickel. The reason being is because gold was too valuable to make some of the smaller purchases. So if you had a gold coin, even if it was a tiny gold coin, and you wanted to buy a cup of coffee, it was overkill because the gold was too valuable. You would almost have to scrape off a few shavings of your coin to buy a cup of coffee, which is not practical. So what they did was they started introducing copper coins and silver and nickel, so that even though the copper was valuable, it had some value, not as much as the gold. So you could make smaller purchases without just shoot you a few copper coins and we'll be good. Thanks for the magazine. Eventually, we moved away from the gold and silver and copper coins, because those were actually, the value was real value. It wasn't an ascribed value. And see, now we've moved on to things that have no real value intrinsically, but we have ascribed or stamped a value on it. I could give you $100 bill. What do you think it's really worth? It's a piece of paper. And I know it came from a specific tree, and I get that. But it's not worth $100. It's just a piece of paper. It's only worth $100 because we have ascribed a certain value to it. And this is what's happening with us. God's people, the silver and the gold that we are, we're starting to become alloyed and based. And now we call our coins, they're called base coins, meaning that they have no real value. It's a base coin. It's been alloyed with other metals and not precious. It's common. It's been debased. So as a society, we're being told now what is valuable. We're being told what has worth. And you know, the craziest thing is, you know, I'm on Facebook, okay? But I see in my feeds how everything that we should be ashamed of, we're now proud of. And the things that we should be proud of, we're now ashamed of. So I see things, you know, and it's, you know, I don't want to get specific because, you know, some of my friends are in here on Facebook. But it's not involving y'all, I promise. But I see stuff like, you know, people saying how great it is to be greedy. You know, you out there at a restaurant with a plate full of food and all you can say is team greedy. Like, I'm greedy. Like, when I was a child, I was taught that that was a bad thing. But now it's a good thing to be greedy. It's a good thing to be selfish. It's a good thing to post things like, I'm all about the money over everything. That's shameful. Yeah. Really? You know, but I get it. And I've myself have been caught up in that and the baser things of life. If we continue to debase ourselves and align ourselves with things that cause us not to be pure gold anymore, not to be pure silver, eventually we'll be just like dollar bills, and we will ascribe value to things that are worthless. Just like a paper dollar bill is really worthless, but it has a value that we assign to it. And we'll get sucked into thinking that things are valuable when they really aren't. They're just pieces of paper, or they're just worthless pieces of nickel or copper or some other base metal. The easy thing is now, after God told me this, it's like, okay, now it's very, very easy for me to recognize when I'm getting caught into something that's worthless. When you ask people, and it's so funny because if you were to sit down and you have a conversation with Oprah or Barack or, you know, Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, the things that they're talking about are on a totally different level than the stuff you're talking about. You say, hey, you know, everybody know who Warren Buffett is? Very, like, one of the wealthiest people in the world. That's all you really need to know. He's one of the world's greatest investors to ever live, okay? I say, Warren is telling me about Roth IRAs and my 401k and different stocks, and I'm like, Warren, that's crazy, man. You know, what do you think of this whole Meek Mill Drake beef? What? What? Successful people aren't talking about that base stuff, that low socioeconomic, worthless, common stuff. But that's not to, you know, talk about us or down us. But if we are who we say we are and we belong to who we say we belong to, we got to talk like it. So when the conversations come, I remember Cameron was telling me at work, when people come to him with all this, he did this, or did you see? He said, man, they don't come to Cam with that. They already know. But that's how we got to be. And it's not, isolating yourself from society, because Jesus didn't isolate himself from society. He got criticized for being too much in the crowd and talking to certain people that people felt that he shouldn't be talking to. But we got to be careful what we get involved in. And I'm not saying you can't have you can keep up with power or empire. I get that. I do. But when you find yourself getting too engrossed in something, you got to be careful with what you're watching, what you're doing, and what comes out of your mouth. Is it just me, or that do you realize in your life when you keep talking about something, your life will eventually line up with what you say? Do you know the Bible calls your tongue a rudder? It steers the ship. When you keep talking about a certain thing, man, I got to get me a new keyboard, man. This is crazy, man. The keys aren't working and certain things aren't going right with it, man. I guess I just wore it out. Got to get me a new keyboard, man. I keep practicing on this one every day, and it's just not working anymore. You keep saying that over and over again, and things like this happen. You get a new keyboard, I remember somebody in the church saying, man, I wish I had some nice drums. And lo and behold, I come Sunday and there were new drums over here. When you keep saying certain things, now it could be bad or good, but if you keep talking about it, eventually your life is going to align yourself. Do you know that we were made in his image and in his likeness? So as God spoke it and it came to be, he gave you that same power. That's why he said the power of life and death is in the tongue. You have the ability to have what you say and what you keep professing. So the sad thing is that can go either way. When you say, it's a crappy day, or this is happening, or, here we go. I know it's going to be some drama when I come into work. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be drama when you get to work. We'll get out of John. Go to Philippians, and I'm going to wrap up soon. Go to Philippians chapter 4. See, we got to, just like God was saying, he said, this contemptible, when something is, another synonym for base is contemptible. Anybody know what contemptible means? It's a good word. It comes from contempt. If you've ever seen a legal show, they say, and somebody gets out of line or has a loud outburst or starts freaking out, they place them in contempt of court. The beauty of that is our God uses a lot of legal talk in the Bible, covenants, judge, he is our lawyer. So when you're doing something that's baser, or you're involved in the baser things, the synonym for that is contemptible. You're in contempt of God's court. You are now contrary to the way the law operates. That's how you get placed in contempt of court and placed in cuffs and placed in jail, because you are operating outside of the way this whole legal process works. When you're involved in the baser things of life, contemptible things. Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. Yeah. And I swear, it's like I said, I'm up here talking about this because I'm telling you what I was guilty of. Not, this is something that I'm already over that, that was what I did when I was a kid. No, God told me this stuff like 2 weeks ago. So I'm telling you because I'm going through it, Philippians chapter 4, is it up? I can just read it here. That's cool. Finally, brethren, okay, now if we're not focusing on the baser things and we're starting to talk about real stuff and starting to do things that mean something, what are we supposed to be thinking about? Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just. See, there's a legal word, just. Whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. If there be any virtue and if there be any praise, think on these things. You know, sometimes like there's certain verses that I get tired of. I mean, that's a very, very simple verse, and it's something that everybody knows. But the funny thing is no matter how simple it is, you know, we miss it sometimes, and we catch ourselves not how, I mean, it can't get any easier than that. Like, what was I thinking? Like, what was I doing? Like, why did you ever, don't you hate when somebody has to tell you something that you already know, but you just didn't do it? You know, when I read this and it was like God was telling me, I was like, come on, man, like I already know that. But obviously he was telling me because I did not consistently practice it, you know? And I hate being told to do things I already know to do. I just haven't gotten around to it. Stop telling me, you know? And I'm closing, but I hope there are a few things that I hope stick with you, like the word base. I hope it sticks with you like it's sticking to me. That whole, like, when you royalty, that's what they do, you know. And I know, like I said, it's not about being bougie, but you got to get away from what they're doing. You know what I mean? And what they're talking about and what they're engaging in, because you're debasing yourself. Like, you'll never see Prince William doing what you're doing. He's not going to go to the bar where you are. He's not going, his children don't go to school with your children, you know? That's why we can't let our children watch what their children watch. You understand what I mean? Like, you understand this whole royalty thing? Certain things don't mix. That's why he said be in the world, but not of the world. We always taught to forsake the things of the world. And I get it. I know you're tired of hearing it. But every now and then, I got to hear it because I catch myself slipping, you know? Just being honest. So in closing, I hope that it's in you to the point where you get a phone call or you get a text and you just look at it like, I ain't got time to discuss that. Like, that's base. Like, those are the baser things. I don't care what Drake said. I don't care that Meek didn't come back. I don't care that his career is probably over. You know? So what? That's his girlfriend's tour. I get that. You know? But I hope that when people, I hope it's to the point where it turns you off. And I hope that you look at what you do today and you're like, and going forward, like, man, I'm over that. Like, enough of that. I'm going to clean up. Or I'm going to do something that's pure. I'm going to think about something that's honest, something that's of good report. I don't have time to text you back and forth about, you know, Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert getting a divorce. I don't have time for it, you know? And it's true. Sad but true. Lord,